Welcome to Explore Kids Online.
Ellie, what are you doing? Shoving a finger up my nose. A giant finger at that. Okay. All right. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Actually, let's have a look at that a minute because welcome to Explore Kids Online, everybody. As you can see, the back of this giant hand with the giant finger says Jesus is number one. That's what we're talking about today.
Number one.
Being number one. What I've got here, Ellie, I printed this off the internet. It's the official charts top 10. So these are the top selling songs of this last week. I think it might be downloads or it might be actual sales in shops or off the internet. I don't know. But if you look at it, there's 10 different songs. So number 8 is Looking for Me by Paul Woodford and Diplo Lomax. Number 5 is Mood Swings by Pop Smoke featuring Lil J. Okay, but the one I want to look at in particular is number 1, which is WAP. Yeah, WAP by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion. And that's number 1 because they have sold more records. That's showing my age, isn't it? They've sold more songs.
Old.
I know. Had more downloads, more CD, whatever it is, than anybody else. They've sold more, and as a result of that, had it played more on YouTube, I think that counts as well. And because of that, they're right up at the top. They are the number 1. Because they've sold the most. So number 1 can mean the best. In a sense, they're the best because they've sold the most. Number 1 can also mean the most important. Okay, so the number 1 person in our country is probably the Queen, the most important person in our country. She would be the number 1. You were talking about the number 1 in your class.
It changes every week because we become Star of the Week.
Okay, so the Star of the Week is like the number 1 in it. It's the one that's been the best in the class for that week. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? So we want to talk about how Jesus is the very best. He's more important than anybody else in our lives, and we want people to recognize this. And this is all about thinking about something called the 10 Commandments, which were 10 special rules that God gave the people of Israel, but we need to pay attention to them as well, okay, about how they should love God and follow God. And it says you shouldn't have any other gods but God, and you shouldn't make an idol. And we won't go into what that means particularly, except to say that it means Jesus is number 1. Make Jesus number 1.
Number.
That means number. Let me tell you a story that illustrates that, shall we? So, what I've got here is I've got
Meat.
5. They do look like meat, but they're actually supposed to be loaves of bread. Okay, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish from a very famous story. From a very famous story called the feeding of the 5,000. And what it was is Jesus one day was teaching, and there was an enormous big crowd there. Big crowd of people were listening to him. And they had been there ages, and they were all starting to get just a little bit hungry.
And they didn't pack picnics.
No, they didn't. They didn't. So the disciples said to Jesus, "Jesus, we need to send these people away so that they can get something to eat." And Jesus says, "No. We're too far away from the local towns. That's not realistic. Tell you what, you give them something to eat." And they're like, "There's 5,000 people here, Jesus." There is. How on earth do we feed 5,000 people? That's impossible. Jesus said, "Well, what food have you got?" Well, they said, "Look, there's a little boy over there, and he's got a packed lunch, and he's
Didn't
got..."
They go searching and then find it?
Well, possibly they did. He's got a packed lunch with 5 small loaves of bread.
1, 2, 3, 5.
and 2 small fish. But that's never going to feed that number of people, surely, Jesus. And Jesus says, don't worry, tell everybody to sit down. And then he gave thanks to God for the food. And then it says he started to break up the loaves and fishes. No, I'm going to do it. The loaves and fishes, because it's a trick, and I know what I'm doing. The loaves and fishes. He started to tear up the loaves and fishes, okay, and gave it to his disciples to give out to all the people, okay, and everybody had sat down. Now, think about it, 5,000 people. Actually, there might not have been 5,000 people. It says that there were 5,000 men. So actually, if there were women and children, ladies and children...
5,000 times 2?
10,000.
So there could have been 10,000.
Could have been 10,000, 15,000, maybe even as many as 20,000 people there. And they only had 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Okay. But Jesus broke the bread and the fish, gave it to his disciples. The disciples gave it out to the people, and there was an absolute miracle because everybody oops,
it's upside down.
It's upside down. 5,000 people were fed. 5,000 people were fed. 5,000. And you're being very kind and not talking about the bit of paper that I dropped down there.
I know.
And you think that, and if you saw that bit of paper, you think I messed up the trick. But let me show you something. This was the bit of paper. Can you hold that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This was the bit of paper that I dropped. I did this in assembly, in a school assembly one time, and all the kids laughed and thought that I'd messed it up. Until they thought, that's where this torn up bits of paper went. He dropped it on the floor. Until I opened it up and told them the rest of the story, which was after feeding all of those people, the disciples went round to pick up the food that was left over, and there were 12 baskets of food left over. How is that amazing? Now, you might be thinking, what on earth has that got to do with Jesus being number 1? Well, very simply, that little boy could have just kept his lunch to himself. He could have said, the most important person around here is me. I've got my lunch and I've done the right thing. I've brought some lunch. I'm going to eat my lunch. But no, he decided to share. He decided to not only to share, but also to trust Jesus as being the most important. And because he gave because he put Jesus first, before himself, an amazing miracle was done. And all those people were fed. Isn't that incredible? Absolutely incredible. Here's a song about Jesus being number 1.
You are the force that drives my car. Without your love,
So there you have it. So that song was really good because it talked about making Jesus number one, the most important, the best, by talking in terms of us being like a car and Jesus is the driver. You know, and that's a really good way of putting it, isn't it? Let me show you a verse from the Bible. As I said, this is the first commandment, first one out of the 10 commandments. It says, "You shall have no other gods before me." Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. Then there's another one, as I said, that talks in terms of not making an idol, not making something that we give all of our attention to and all of our time to, that's more important than God. But both of those two commands can be summed up with Jesus is number one, which is why we're doing both of them together. And I want. And do you like our big pointy finger hand? That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to show you how to make one of those. In fact, this is just a little small A4 size one made from some A4 sizes of paper. We're going to make some,
can do at home.
which you can do at home if you've only got A4 size paper. But we are going to make some great big ones here.
With
so
A3. We've got sellotape.
We've got sellotape.
We have got paper.
Paper.
We've got scissors.
And we've got scissors. And what I'm going to do...
Colouring pencils.
And colouring pencils. And what I'm going to start to do... Oh, give me one of those colouring pencils.
Which one?
Doesn't matter, just so long as it's sharp. Okay. And I'm going to draw... Oh, a pen will do. Pen will do. And what you want to do is you want to draw... Okay. A pointy finger. So here we go. So I'm going to draw some pointy fingers. Now I made a bit of a mistake before. Okay, in that well, it's not a big mistake. Okay, it's not a big mistake. I didn't really make the finger long enough in my mind, so I've made this finger on this one ginormous. Okay, so why don't I cut that out?
I want to cut it.
Do you? Okay, you cut it. Be nice and quick though, because otherwise this video will go on for a long time. We're over 14 minutes into it already. Okay. Okay. In fact, we might just have to show you the basics and let you figure out some of this for yourself. Okay.
Well, we can tell you what to do, and we will.
Okay. So you draw yourself a nice big pointy finger. Okay. Now I've put 2 sheets of paper together. Ellie's actually cutting out 2 sheets of paper together. How are you doing with that?
Good.
Okay.
I'm on the giant finger.
Yeah. Let me hold that for you to keep it still. Okay. Now we're cutting it together because then you instantly get 2
matching ones.
2 matching
Matching ones. And it's less cutting.
And it's less cutting. But of course, if you find that a bit tricky, you can cut them out separately. In fact, if you find cutting tricky, you can always get someone to help you, and that's never a bad thing to do because scissors are, after all, sharp. Okay. Now, so we already have, okay, our thing. Now, what we would do is we would colour this in, and once we've coloured it in, okay, we would sellotape them together. Okay, let's just tilt that down. So sellotape them together. Now this can be a bit tricky, but if you put the sellotape down so it goes half.
But you can ask for help.
You can half on the hand and then half off. Can you see? And then you just fold that over like that, and it's made a nice thing.
And you have to do it on both sides because otherwise it will go off on either side.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it will
yeah.
open up and it will be hard.
You do. And of course, what you're doing is you're making a glove. Okay.
You're making
Okay.
a glove.
You're making a glove, like that. Okay, so
That was a lot.
a nice long bit. Okay, I'm gonna stick that on the
We have to put it on the finger.
finger. Actually, that's too long. That's too.
We've got scissors.
Yeah, you chop that for me.
Chop it.
Brilliant. Okay,
And then we can use this in a minute.
folding it over like that. Okay, just like that. Doing this as quickly as I can. The sellotape will also hopefully make it a bit more rigid. Of course, if you've got some card, you could possibly make this out of card, I guess, and that would make it nice and rigid. Okay. Now, we talked about Jesus being number one. We can put all kinds of things before Jesus, before God, but he is the best thing in our lives, and so he's the one that's most worthy of our attention, and we want to make Jesus number one. We want to do what he says, we want to obey him, we want to follow him. Now, this has hopefully made, do you want to put that, try that on for size, Ellie? Okay. Okay, it is a bit of a bendy finger, never mind. Bit of a bendy finger, never mind. And then obviously what you need to do is colour it in, okay? And then of course, where's the other one? Where's the original?
Next to you.
Next to me. And then of course you can write Jesus is number one on the front. And of course, what I've done is you can draw all of the fingers and the marks of the hands and fingernails and things like that on it, just to make it look really, really good and help you to remember that we want to make Jesus number one. Fantastic. That was good fun. Are you going to just finish that off and make that for yourself? But we'll say goodbye to these guys because, wow, nearly 20 minutes has gone again. So that's another video done, and we will see you again next week. Bye.